one, you can grab the pole and go down fairly slowly. But if you've ever looked carefully at a phone pole, you will see that there are upward-facing splinters. Big mamas of splinters. So if you grab the pole, as you go down, your body will ingest splinters wherever it touches the pole. And then for the rest of your life, you will either have partial splinters within, or you will have a lot of splinter scars. And the second choice is push off. At that critical moment, I decided to push off. Well, I was pretty high up in the air. When I came down on my butt and my elbow and impacted the lower part of my back. And ever since then, it sometimes does what it did yesterday. And I was walking. The fact that I'm sitting here is amazing tonight. I was walking and it was really hurting. Now, don't ask me what causes this, but it just locked. And it was like somebody took a knife and stabbed it in my back, and I went to the floor real quickly. Where I stayed for a while, by the way, and then with the help of a chair got up. So it was really bad. Bad. That's what happened yesterday. And for, well, all day, I couldn't move much. And yes, by the way, before everybody sends me their back cure when they hear about this. No need, folks. Go to the doctors, have the MRIs, all that kind of stuff. So don't send it. I know what's wrong. They know what's wrong. I've seen those ads on TV where you go in for back surgery and they do a little tiny cut. And then when you're done, they put a Band-Aid on your spine and you leave. I thought that was cool. And I asked my doctor about that because, I mean, who doesn't want a couple minutes of attention and a Band-Aid, baby, compared to open her up and put a steel bar in there. And so, of course, I asked my doctor commercial. He said, yeah, but it's not for your back, buddy. Actually, when I had my original MRI here just, I don't know, a decade ago, the doctor came back in the room, said a word that I cannot repeat here on the radio about the state of my back. It starts with F. You know, he told me it was really up. Anyway, every now and then, a couple times a year or more, it does that. It's scary. All right, let me cover, by the way, just before I get to that, you know what, when budding talk show hosts contact me by email or phone or however they're going to contact me, and they do by the score, many of them, and they ask for advice, how do you get in? And I've only ever given one response because it's the only one I know to give. What do we do to get into talk radio? What do we do? And my comment is always the same. Be yourself. That's the only advice I ever give anybody trying to get into this business, because if you're doing talk radio and you're not yourself, you're going to get caught. It's as simple as that. So be yourself and you'll stay out of trouble. You know, it's like the advice your mama gave you. I am going to call attention to one thing because, you know, sometimes when you give advice, it doesn't sink in. You know that other talk show host over there, right? Getting all... people are sending me wormhole messages. And basically it's... I want to clear up one more thing. It has been said that I picked George and Mary. That's not true. I met George and Mary coast to coast at a lunch here in my little town. And that's the first I ever saw of him, so I obviously didn't pick him. But what I did do is I gave him the same advice that I give every talk show host, and I really did in this case, because he was stepping in to do that show. And so I said again and again, be yourself. That means make it yours. And this really is sincere advice, because I don't think there's any other way to do it anyway. I'm getting all these emails and now this, that from me in Asheville, North Carolina. George all of a sudden is started saying as of last night that he's raging in the night. Really? Well, sometimes advice over lunch is not heard. This is going to be a really interesting night, and the reason it's going to be interesting is because we've got a CIA agent, big guy, on the show. I've always wanted a CIA agent. Now, of course, he's not current, because if he was, as soon as he went on the air, he'd be, well, probably not current. Not at room temperature. So that'll be coming up. A few things as usual. The usual ghost photo contest ends Sunday. This Sunday, guaranteed, coming at noon. My webmaster calls himself Ghostmaster Roland. But, I mean, there's something to be won here. A radio, a Sirius XM radio, and a 1-year subscription. Go to the winner. Send your ghost pictures to webmaster@artbell.com. Webmaster@artbell.com. Send your ghost stories to me. Include a short, oh please make it short, like a paragraph or two, sort of a summary of your story, to artbell@artbell.com, and we may call you on Spooky Matter. It'll be our Halloween show. I've got a video up on artbell.com, and I want to talk to you about these videos. Hear me, folks. I'm going to put up videos and pieces on the website that I consider to be interesting. It doesn't mean that somebody didn't hoax them, somebody didn't Photoshop them. I never can know for sure. I'll leave that up to you. I'm putting up the interesting stuff, whether you like it or not. You know, people complain, oh, that's got to be a fake. Well, I know the dragon was a fake, duh. The other stuff, I don't know. This hotel photo, or I should say video. Pretty damn scary stuff. It's about a complaint of screaming, a woman screaming in one of the rooms. You'll see the guy on security camera footage go and you'll hear the radio stuff too, and you'll see him go to the door, and so much more. Oh, God, that's scary. I don't know if it's real. Nobody can know if anything's real anymore. You know what you can be on the internet, right? So, I don't make any warranties about this stuff. I just put it up. And then there's this really cool British Columbia UFO video. And these things just keep coming. Who knows what that is? And then there's a video of 49 quadcopters at night. It's like what you can be on the internet. You know, we're going to have to be wary of all video that we get now. And once again, I just put the interesting stuff up. If I think it's cool, it goes up there. If you want to complain about it as probably being hoaxed, then go right ahead. Maybe it is. But unless I know for sure, I won't put it up and let you guys decide. You want to see this hotel video, trust me. It's at artbell.com. UFOs in Canada, the 49 quadcopters at night, it could be anything. And then there's so much more news to talk about. The fact that in Montana and North Dakota, the two-man crews, the missiles, apparently have been leaving the blast doors open on a couple of occasions. This is really bad. Really, really bad. I mean, these are the guys who would launch the nuclear missiles that would retaliate, because we would never fire first, right? Or whatever. They're in control of the keys. I think they each have a gun on their head. Right? If the movies were correct. They were caught apparently asleep twice while the blast doors. Very important. You know, blast doors, very, very important, because the enemy, of course, would strike first at what? At our offensive capability. Right? So leaving the glass doors open is just wrong on so many levels and worrisome. I've got a lot more news, but I've already talked the best part of a quarter of an hour, so I'm done. I'll save it for tomorrow. In the meantime, go to artbell.com and see all that is there for you, and there's quite a bit. All right, coming up in a moment, Charles S. Faddis. I hope I'm getting that right. Faddis, Faddis. President of Orion Strategic Services, LLC, a CIA operations officer. 20 years of experience in the conduct of intelligence operations in the Middle East, South Asia, and Europe. He has worked against the most dangerous terrorist organizations on our planet, has extensive first-hand experience with their methodology and tactics. His last assignment prior to retirement in May of 2008 was as head of the CIA's terrorist weapons of mass destruction unit. He took the first CIA team into Iraq in the summer of 2002. That was in advance of the invasion of that country. And he has worked extensively in the field with law enforcement, local security forces, and special ops teams. Since his retirement, he has written extensively and provided training to a wide variety of government and private entities. His most recent book, Kappa, is about a fictional bioweapons attack on the U.S. and is available at Amazon.com. So, coming up in just a moment, prepare yourselves. This could be really, really, really interesting. My guest tonight, well, I've got probably a lot of tough questions for him. Questions that he may not answer, but that's all right. Sometimes what you are asked you cannot answer. We're going to break here because this is Dark Matter raging in the nighttime. I'm Art Bell. By the way, do you say raging or flailing? That's touch. Howdy, everybody. All right, bringing now Charles S. Faddis. Charles, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. I have never... Well, let's get it straight. Have you been an agent or were you a CIA officer?
I was what the average person calls a CIA agent, but CIA doesn't use that term. They refer to them as officers.
Okay. All right. So, but either vision probably works pretty well, right?
So, my job was to recruit spies, run spies, conduct covert operations, clandestine operations. That's what people mean when they see CIA agent.
Holy smokes. I have always, all my life, wanted to interview somebody like yourself. Are there questions that you cannot answer?
I guarantee you there are questions I cannot answer, but that doesn't mean you can't ask them.
Could you list a few?
Well, that doesn't seem fair. Wait, I can start by saying that's one of the questions I can't answer.
Fine. You were involved in some incredible work. I mean, I can't even imagine what it was like to go into Iraq, and we'll get that. First, though, I want to talk about your book. I guess when you retire from the CIA, you live on whatever you get from the CIA, and if you did retire after 20 or however many, how many do you have to have anyway?
If you're in the clandestine service doing what I was doing, you can retire at 20 years. I had been in the Army before then, so that federal service is cumulative. Anyway, yes, I retired. I was able to retire from them, so I get a pension from them.
I would imagine the odds are with them never having paid pension if your work is dangerous enough.
That depends on how good you are,
Yes, I'm sure. Listen, we've got a lot of time, and we can go into all kinds of areas that'll probably get you in trouble. But I do want to talk to you about your. I am I'm a classic doomsday story lover. I don't care whether it's nuclear conflict, biological, I guess the totality of a biologic attack, something really horrible. I'm into all that kind of stuff, and I read those books and see those movies. And you've written something, right?
Right. So the latest book I've written is a novel, and it's called Kafa. And we can talk about the title and where that comes from. And it's about a fictional biological weapons attack on the United States, in this case using the plague. And when I write fiction, I try to do a couple of things. I mean, one is I try to make it fun, so it doesn't turn into a textbook or tedious. It should be a fast read. It should be entertaining. But the second thing is, I do try to write something that actually reflects, as much as I can, the reality of intelligence operations, counter-terrorist operations, real threats. So, my books are not filled with cars that fly and nuclear wristwatches and all the James Bond stuff. It's a much grittier, street level look at a world where people stay alive mostly by being quick and thinking 2 steps ahead, and you sort of live by your wits. And the biological weapons thing is actually a great topic for that, because it's not science fiction. It is unfortunately what most WMD experts call the number one most realistic terrorist WMD threat that we are.
Oh, I think so, because biological agents multiply all by themselves with our help, right?
Exactly. I mean, what you're talking about. I mean, there's also the possibility of engineering, nasty new things, but by and large, what you're talking about is being worried about people spreading pathogens that are already out there and are already engineered to kill human beings.
Yes, but as you point out, something engineered could be all the more lethal and all the more contagious. It could be designed to be all of that, and I'm sure that there are things that we have that do that, and Russia has and others have. And what do you know about how much of that stuff is out there?
Well, both. Let's just talk about the U.S. and Russia right now. I mean, both countries have had in the past not only biological weapons programs, but large offensive biological weapons programs. In other words, programs that were designed to develop weapons to kill or incapacitate millions of human beings, to be used offensively to attack other countries. The U.S., I think, legitimately did walk away from that some time past. The Russians claim to have. But there's a little. I mean, and I think largely that's true. But there's always a catch, right? So the thing is that both countries and a number of other people continue to pursue work that they would characterize as defensive. In other words, they pursue work in laboratories which is characterized as being designed to prepare us to protect ourselves. Well,
sure.
In reality, if you're mucking with microorganisms and you're researching deadly pathogens, whether you're trying to figure out how to use them offensively or defensively, you're still cultivating deadly pathogens. So even if you're not building bombs filled with anthrax, if you're cultivating anthrax and it's still sitting in laboratories, as we saw with the attacks in D.C., over a decade ago, then you've still got deadly pathogens. You've still got stuff that can kill people. And if it gets out of those labs, it doesn't why you made it in the first place. It's still going to kill people.
Bad as anthrax may be, I can envision a biological organism, as you pointed out, engineered, that could be, I suppose, suicidal, that bad for whoever used it, because it would ultimately get back. I'm sure that even those kinds of things, doomsday weapons, are probably being experimented with, and that's a scary thought.
Well, you got a couple of things that are going on in that vein. First of all, we're facing terrorist threats from people who are obviously prepared to die. In fact, in many cases, seeking death in the course of attacking us, because that guarantees they're going to paradise. So if a guy's willing to strap himself with explosives and blow himself to pieces to kill people, he's certainly willing to, for instance, infect himself with a disease and serve in that way as a human bomb. The other thing that's going on is there already is a lot of research with engineering pathogens. This has been very controversial in the U.S. We have labs where they have been working, basically taking a look at things they're afraid of, like the avian flu, and they're afraid it will mutate because these organisms mutate and evolve all the time. They're afraid that they'll mutate and develop the capacity to be transmitted much more readily directly from human to human. And so what they do is they then deliberately try to engineer it to do that so they can figure out how to defend against it. Right. So if you think about that, that's a little, and therein lies the rub, right? That's the controversy is like, okay, wait, so you're afraid that this might happen. So you're making it happen. And what happens when that organism gets loose out of that lab, either unintentionally or because, one of your lab assistants took it out in a vial and handed it off to some group, you've just doomed us all.
Yes. Yes. Is there actually the potential for something so contagious, so deadly, that it would be suicidal to release it? Do you know such an organism exists?
So you mean suicidal in the sense that it's going to kill everybody? Or
Yes.
Well, the number one organism, frankly, that everybody is worried about at the top of the list for biological weapons agents is not one that's been engineered. It's smallpox. And, we're always told that smallpox is extinct, but that's not quite true. It's really gone, and it continues to exist. And it is like as you said, look, we're talking about natural organisms, right? So they're already out there, and they already have the capacity to kill. They grow. They're organisms. You don't have to steal a ton of a virus or a bacteria. You steal enough to then culture it and cultivate it and grow it, and then you have whatever quantity you want, depending on how much time you have and how good you are at doing that. So tiny quantities of smallpox, in other words, could then basically allow you to develop an entire program. And that terrifies the hell out of people, because that will, I'm not saying it will kill everybody on the planet. It will kill vast numbers of individuals, potentially millions and millions of people.
And the use of any such really, really deadly pathogen like that would be, the risk would be that a great number of your own people, whoever your own people are, would also die, right? We've got air travel. Things go around the world real quickly.
That's right. When people talk about chemical weapons, one of the reasons why chemical weapons sort of were abandoned by many countries after a while was because you really can't control them. You release the stuff, and whichever way the wind is going, that's where the stuff goes, right? So sometimes it blows back in your own face, and it was a bad day for you. So biological weapons, obviously, yes, you cut it loose, and now it's rampaging through a population. Well, every day in Dulles Airport, there are planes taking off and landing, going everywhere on the planet. So once you've infected DC, you've infected the planet. It's going to spread worldwide. So yes, it'll come home to you. But if you have this sort of end of time view of the world, and if you're convinced that God is on your side and He's ultimately going to protect you and not the other guy, you're probably willing to light that fuse.
I hear you, and that is the mentality. And now, a little while ago, you said the United States walked away from biological weapons. Okay. But at the same time, you told me, there's still this defensive research going on. And then I would also like to ask, are you absolutely certain that we disposed of all of our stockpiles of such weapons?
Well, after as many years as I have spent in the intelligence business, I'm very hesitant to ever say I'm absolutely certain of anything. I'm continuously surprised. To the best of my knowledge, that is true. That is legitimately true. But from if we're talking from a terrorist standpoint, it's largely. A terrorist is, because a terrorist is not really looking to steal fully functional bombs that we keep on a shelf somewhere. All he really needs to do is acquire the agent. And then usually they're going to use, I mean, by agent, I mean, the actual biological organism, the pathogen. And then he's going to use it in what we would consider to be an incredibly crude way, using some relatively simplistic approach. And it's not going to matter because people are going to be just as dead at the end of the day.
All right, question for you. Yes, yep. I'm sorry. A question for you. If I note mentally a hesitation in your voice, or you very carefully qualify an answer, can I draw conclusions from that?
Well, one of the conclusions you could draw is before I ended up in the intelligence business is that I was a trial lawyer. And so sometimes when we walk into sensitive territory, I will make sure that I am choosing my words very carefully so that my meaning is very precise.
Your meaning is?
So I'm again, to the best of my knowledge, it is absolutely true that the U.S. did in fact do that. But hey, maybe there's a secret bunker somewhere that they never took me to. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. You see, I'm going to give you a rough time, right?
That's cool. That's fine.
All right. You were actually head of the CIA's Weapons of Mass Destruction Terrorism Unit. And you were apparently so at the beginning of the whole, or even prior to the Iraq situation, right?
Well, I actually became head of that unit after, well, it depends on when the beginning of the Iraq situation is. I became head of that unit 2006, I guess. But one of the reasons I became head of that unit is because I had been heavily involved with things concerning weapons of mass destruction really throughout the bulk of my career. I had done a whole slew of things prior to that had to do with WMD, so it was natural for me to be the guy who was put in that position.
Now remember, you don't have a military, but I'm right. Absolutely. Ultimately, we didn't find WMDs in Iraq. Or some have said that they got them the hell out of Iraq and they went to Syria. Do you know which is the case?
So I heard during my time, I spent almost a year in Iraq. Almost all of that before there was really anybody else at the party. I mean, beyond our team. And before the war, right? Right. Before there were any boots on the ground, before the air war had started. When we first went in, there were a grand total of 8 of us. So, and in the course of doing what you're doing, which is collecting intelligence, you're talking to a lot of guys. So you hear a lot of stories, and some of them turn out to be true, and some of them turn out to be lies, and some of them indicate that the guy you're talking to has a serious mental illness, and everything in between. So in the course of that, I've probably heard every possible where the weapons of mass destruction have gone or what happened to them, including one that I recall, which the guy claimed that all the biological weapons had been sewn into the stomachs of cows, and those cows had been driven across the border into Syria. And all we needed to do was find those cows, and we would have weapons of mass destruction. He did not have a plan for how he would identify the cows in question and differentiate between them and all the other cows in Syria.
Did you actually ask?
Well, no, the guy who was talking to me was telling me this, the source. He was telling me that I should go have our people go to Syria and find the cows. He was obviously, he believed that. I don't think he was deliberately lying. I think he was just crazy. To the best of my knowledge, what happened was that Saddam Hussein did something that would only happen in a place like Iraq in the Middle East, which is he made a decision that he was in fact going to disarm because he wanted to get rid of UN sanctions. He wanted to get rid of UN sanctions, by the way, so that once the UN was gone, he could reconstitute his programs. And then he simultaneously lied basically to all of his own people and everybody in neighboring countries, telling them that he was lying to the UN. So he got rid of the weapons, but then told his own people, including his most senior officers, many of them with whom we met, that this was a lie and that they were all still in hidden bunkers. This is the kind of twisted logic that goes on in the Middle East. Obviously, his rationale was, I need to disarm to get out from under UN sanctions. But if my own people actually believe that, I am likely to be dead tomorrow and deposed. It is necessary that they and the Iranians and everybody around me believe that I am doing what I have always done and that I have these weapons hidden away somewhere. You would have thought at some point he would have figured out that this is kind of signing your own death warrant. But apparently that never dawned on him. Anyway, to the best of my knowledge, there really were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. When we went in afterward, and eventually we found some stores of old chemical munitions, mostly stuff that the Iraqis didn't even realize they still had.
All right. Well, of course, we prosecuted that war based on the premise that weapons of mass destruction were indeed there.
Yes.
Is it your view that that really was the premise that launched that war, or just the publicly stated premise?
You know, it's my view that a lot of that the people who launched that war believed that was true, but if that had not been the premise, they would have found another one, if that makes sense. In other words,
it makes a lot of sense.
The decision was made that we were going to get rid of Saddam. I think they legitimately had convinced themselves that, and we're talking now, the administration, that there were weapons of mass destruction and they weren't really going to be dissuaded. But even if they had been convinced to the contrary, they would have been looking for another pretext. I should, just to clarify here, I was actually named to head the first team going into Iraq in either January or February of 2002. And at the time that I was named to head that team, I was told that I was in charge of that. By the way, I shouldn't complain about that because I not only volunteered for it, I more or less demanded the thing.
Okay.
So I got what I deserved. But in any event, the word was we were sending in teams. I basically demanded, said, hey, I based on prior experience, I need to be the dude who takes the first team in. They agreed. I went. So we were told that we were going into Iraq certainly by February 2002. We didn't actually get in until that summer, but that has to do with delays. We were attempting to get in there prior to that. And our mission from the day the team was stood up was to prepare the ground for an invasion. So we were not told. I mean, obviously, when you go in on the ground in a mission like this, you have a lot of requirements. And obviously, you're going to go collect on weapons of mass destruction. But we were not told, go find out whether or not they have weapons of mass destruction. We were told, we know they have weapons of mass destruction. We are going to invade. That decision has already been made as of February 2002. Primary, in addition to everything else you're doing, your number one mission is go, what we would call in the trades, prepare the ground for the invasion. You be the first guys on the ground to prep the ground for the military invasion. The decision has already been made by the president. It will happen.
Can you give me a clue of what preparing for a ground invasion would entail for 8 people?
So we go in with 8, and then obviously over a period of time we flow in a certain number of individuals afterward, but inside the team still stays small. In other words, we're never talking more than a few dozen individuals total. We're collecting intelligence on the Iraqi military, for instance, because the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force have endless things they'd like to know about everything. Their comms, their weapons, their morale, their logistical system, yada, yada, everything in the world. So we're collecting boatloads of intelligence. We're establishing relations with the locals, with the Kurds in the north, so that we're prepared to bring troops in. So we're checking roads, checking bridges, checking infrastructure. We're identifying places for drop zones, helicopter landing zones. I mean, there's an endless amount of work. Some of it is strategic intelligence, some of it's groundwork.
I feel it. On what premise were you entered into Iran?
You mean like what was our cover?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. It's non-existent. We were hiding in the mountains with the Kurds. That's what we were doing. As we used to tell new guys when they would show up and be worried about their cover, we'd say, "Listen, I don't know if you've noticed, but you don't blend. You don't blend here, like Vinny. So there might be one really stupid guy in a village here who doesn't know that the Americans are up here, but he's the only guy. So just
let me try this. Did you enter Iraq with a passport, or did you come in through Turkey? Or can you not answer that?
I came in through Turkey,
okay.
And we entered with the assistance of the Kurds, with the Kurdish people that live.
Right. Well, you said you were in the north, so that would have. You said you were in the north, so that would have been my guess.
So we went in and worked with the Kurds. So that gives us, if you will, some sort of base of operations. It gives us allies. It gives us people to help us with security, that kind of stuff.
All right, Charles, you're incredible. Stay right where you are. We're going to take a break. You can relax for a moment, and we'll be right back. The Sea Crane Company would like to offer you a way to record this program with impunity and easily. It's called the CC Witness Plus, and all it is a little MP3 digital recorder and player. It's very, very high quality. So what you can do is just plug this baby into your computer or your phone or whatever. It'll record my 4-hour show, and you can listen at your leisure, or of course plug it into the Sirius XM radio. The CC Witness comes with a couple of gigabytes of storage on board. You can put as many as 4 gigs in it. Comes with 20 timers. It's easy to program. It produces CD quality recordings. It's got an AM/FM radio and mic built in, so if you want to record a conversation, obviously you can do that. And it's got stereo speakers, and it'll fit in your pocket. So you never, ever need miss another one of these shows. The CC Witness Plus you can get it by ordering one right now. Not cheap, but worth every penny. I love mine. $149.95. $149.95. And it's all stored digitally, and you can do it again and again and again. Simply call them at 1-800-522-8863. And somebody said, Art, tell them Sea Crane is not C as in S-E-A, but it's C as in Charles, Crane, ccrane.com.